panelists. First of all, since Professor Girijesh Pant is the first speaker, I may just mention everybody knows him. He is the Dean and Faculty, he is the Dean, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He is an economist by training and having a degree on MA in Economics from Allahabad University. He has published more than 50 papers, and of course we have heard him innumerable times. So may I now request Dr. Girijesh Pant to make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank IDSA for giving me this opportunity to be here this afternoon and to speak a subject which is very important for those of us who are studying West Asia in general and the Gulf region in particular. And since, when you come to the conference like this, we know for sure that the time is going to be limitations for you. So I have not made my presentation to provide you a very comprehensive kind of account, but I just want to flash some issues which I thought one should take the advantage of the experts who are available here with us in this conference. We have been talking about the Arab uprising yesterday, today, and my position is that this Arab uprising is still an unfolding process, you see. So it will be very unfair to call it a spring to winter or something like that, because those of us who have been following the region, we know that the crisis is not of the regime but the more of systemic, you see. And what the tension which I would like to read from the region is basically tension between regime and systems. It's not a question of one leader being replaced. It's not a coup of the kind where you remove one leader and bring a new face. It's because the aspirations for which people came on the Arab street were more related to the system than to regime alone. Now, in my presentation, when I would like to bring this focus to GCC and then look to India and GCC, 3-4 factors I would like to mention here which I feel are relevant in examining this, what is happening in the Arab world and what impact it is making in this part of the Arab world which is called the Gulf region. The first, the 4 or 5 important things which happened in the Arab countries which led to this kind of uprising. One was this: there was an erosion of authority because the state was not in a position to meet the social contract, you see. And I will not elaborate these points, but this is the first point. Second thing was that there was a very tremendous sense of alienation and marginalization and frustration felt across the section of society. The third factor was that, as we know, that it's a young component of the population, that is the urban-based population, which is engaged into a political space through cyber communication. That was the third player which played an important role. And the fourth was the neoliberal economic policies, which creates what is popularly called as a crony capitalism, you see. So these were the factors which created problem in Egypt, in Tunisia, and led to the kind of thing. But all these factors need not necessarily be available in the same intensity, in the same magnitude in the rest of the Arab countries. You will find some of them will be there in one combination, in other combination. Now, when we come to the Gulf countries, obviously I started looking at going by these factors, what are these things are available there. So what I would like to mention is that first thing is that I would like to draw a distinction between rent and the rentier power. Rent provided so far the 70s onward, the rent provided certainly the Gulf countries a tremendous amount, not only in terms of finance, but the capacity of the finance to co-opt the people into the system, you see. And I'm arguing here this afternoon before you that this power is getting eroded in the Gulf region, you see. The oil price may give the regime the rent volume in terms of, but the capacity of the regime to co-opt people, to make people engage, is not going to be there as hugely as it was there in the earlier period. And therefore, you may find possibilities where, as we know, that immediately the Gulf countries enhance their public expenditure to compensate to compensate people the sense of decline of the purchasing power or economic engagement. But my argument here is that it is not going to last beyond a point. The second point where I'm locating my argument here is that there is a carrying capacity of the system, you see. Carrying capacity of the rentier system, you see. The carrying capacity of the rentier system is going to decline very sharply. In fact, I would like to argue, when I come to the India-Gulf part of it, if I have to extrapolate India-Gulf relationship, Mr. Chairman, with the due regards, in my judgment, the relationship has been growing, but the relationship is not robust, you see. And it is a time, this Arab uprising, when juxtaposed into the GCC region, provides us the opportunity to make this relationship robust, and I'll come to this point a bit later. Now, the second situation which is very important for us to observe in this region is that the population, like the Arab countries, the population of the region is very young, you see. In Saudi Arabia, estimates are 60% of the population is very young, you see. And this young population, is again engaged into a huge amount of communication, you see. Twitter, bloggers is something which is very popular in this part as much as possibly in the rest of the Arab countries also. Now, importance of this has to be realized that this is for the first time a sense of community formation is taking place in the region where I is getting converted into we, you see. The individual's problems are, but now with the new communication, is seen as the problem of the we, not the I alone. And that is a very tremendous transformation which provides you a sense of empowerment which possibly otherwise was not available to people because they thought that I am the only sufferer, I am the only alienated person, I am the only marginalized. We find today that and second thing which is again important in this, especially in the Gulf region, this communication space has been used not only to communicate amongst themselves, but also to communicate to the state, to the regime as well, that what are our expectations there, you see. This is possibly, in my judgment, is a totally new, innovative methods by which a person sitting in the drawing rooms can communicate to the rulers, to the regimes, that what kind of my expectations are there. It's very interesting. If you look at the kind of writings coming from the region, in a very nuanced way. Obviously, people are locating them in the political frame. So, in a very nuanced way, they are communicating that what are our expectations and what are our frustrations. Especially, it is very important for us. The 2 points which I want to draw attention, that the women assertion. Recently, a movie by a young lady from Saudi Arabia, which was awarded, in Dubai Film Festival. The theme is very interesting. It's entirely a kind of the entire feminine discourse is in that movie. You can find out, you see, and yet it is done in a manner that doesn't make any kind of offense to the regime. You see, that is in a very nuanced manner. The youngsters are trying to assert their desire, their expectations from the system in coming year. And the last point which is important in this is that huge amount of money, as we know, that the government of these countries have spent huge amount of money on education. But the young Saudis or young Gulf individuals are finding that this education has not made them employable, you see. So therefore, there is a huge, while there was a generation which used to get happy that they were getting huge scholarship, today this generation is worried about the fact that when you come back with these skills into the system, there is no recognition of that skill into the system, you see. So it's the unemployability part of it which is making a huge amount of frustration in this in the region, and that is trying to find some kind of assertion into various kind of now this gets corroborated by the fact that the surveys which have been done in the region, and you notice in this survey that the complaint of the youngsters in the Gulf region is almost a similar kind of a complaint which you find in the young Egyptian or young Tunisian, that high cost of living, unemployment, economic crisis, housing, loss of tradition values, all the fact. I mean, you'll notice that the loss of tradition values come much less and the economic issues are dominating much high in their concerns, you see. The second, this is about them. The first slide was about their concern with the system. Now, second slide is about how it is impinging upon them. Here again, you will find that all those economic issues are playing a very predominant role there. Now, this is the broad, the population which is getting, concerned about the limitations which they are facing in the system today. Now, I am trying to draw attention to a kind of a carrying capacity argument which I have tried to make here. If you just look at the demographic burden of it, you see. Look at the same Gulf region having 8 million population in 90. Today it is having 45, almost about 45 to 50 million population there, you see. It's growing though we find that the growth rate has declined, but it's going in a big number. And by 2025, it is expected to reach around 57 million and to be added by another 14 millions by 2050. Please try to juxtapose or try to appreciate the burden of it in a country where you don't have agriculture sector is not there to sustain you. Your water is a crisis for you, and therefore, if the numbers are increasing in such a big way, it's going to be problematic for any government or any regime which is there, unless until the structural corrections are not being made. Then, to add to problem, while the Indian state will always has been the benefit of getting the remittances. But to add the problem from the perspective of the system, I am saying that look at the kind of the bulk of the population in the region, which is the demographic burden. It comes because of the expatriate population there, and the expatriate population as this graph shows that in many of the countries it exceeds sometimes the total number of the nationals as well. You see. So take the country like Qatar, it is 89.2%, Dubai it is 85.0%, etc., etc. So over most of the countries you will find that is expatriates have come in a big number. And if you look at the employability part of it, that who are getting the jobs? If you look at according to one estimates made by the IMF, that if the 7 million jobs are past decade were created, only 2 million jobs have gone to the nationals, you see. So the point important for us, that the structural dimension important to us, is that jobs are created there, you see. Jobs are being created in the region, but jobs are not going to the nationals, you see. I mean, the reasons are, I'm not going at the moment to the reason, but what I'm trying to only argue here, that how over the decades you don't find that the nationals are getting the jobs. And again, the second point, which is that bulk of the expat population is dominated in the private sector jobs, you see. The graph very clearly tells you that how the private sector, this is very important, because if your economy is diversifying on the strength of the private sector, then you will have to talk in terms of the population which is national. You cannot survive purely on the basis of the expatriate. And if you look at the local population, you will find the state is the major employer, you see. Now, this again becomes a very important issue, because it depends upon the capacity of the state, how long, how much, at what volume, when the numbers which I have mentioned to you, the state will be able to sustain this kind of employment. And therefore, the employment rates, the employment figures are given here of different countries, from Saudi Arabia, to UAE, Kuwait, and the unemployment rate among the women is much higher. Now, it's no surprise to see that today, if you look at the press in the region, the expatriate factor has become one of the major issue of discussion today. You see, I have mentioned here about the kind of remittances which is flowing out of the region. People are raising voice that isn't this a drain on our system? Just because we are not employing our own people, and we are employing people from outside, and we are paying that, and this money is going out of our system, you see. Similarly, you will find that as I mentioned to you, that though it is a fact that expatriates are working in across the low-paying job to high-skilled job, but the issues are gradually emerging on the cultural front as well. And recently, in some of the newspaper, even the Rand Corporation report argued that huge presence of expatriate in the coming years could emerge as a kind of security issue in the Gulf region. Therefore, it's not surprising that the labor market is of central concern. I'm flagging this point because, for the obvious reason, because Indians, 5 to 6 million Indians are there, you see. And if any major changes are going to take place in the labor market, it's going to have a bearing on us, you see. I'm not arguing here there's going to be a very dramatic shift, and the population, the expatriates going to be asked to vacate it, because I do recognize the importance of the expatriate in the system. But what I am trying to draw attention to the fact that the tension which was not there earlier, possibly a situation which was win-win at given point of time, doesn't look as win-win situation today, and one does find this kind of a tension coming in the region because of the huge presence of the expatriate. Now, based on this, I see that in coming years there are three major pressure points which are going to emerge in the region, and which is again supported by the various bank reports. If you read from the region, that region's oil revenues are not going to be as high. I'm sure the Sibanti is going to discuss about the oil prices, but today we know that the oil, there's plenty of oil in the market today, you see. And by any evaluation, including the OPEC, I went through the OPEC evaluation also. They don't see that any oil price rise is going to take place as far as the market is concerned, unless until some kind of a unforeseen activities takes place. You see, suppose there is a news that something going to happen to Iran, or something in turn that the Hormuz is being, uncertain facility. But as far as the supply demand is concerned, there is enough oil into the market. More so where the new source of oil is coming, and the energy independence policies are being talked about, the American, etc. So there is the kind of a leverage enjoyed by the OPEC countries earlier. That leverage seems to be gradually getting eroded. Then one also come across very interesting debate which is coming, though it's still in the not in the dominant discourse taking place there. The writings are coming where people are talking about that why the country like Saudi Arabia is consuming so much of energy. What kind of system we are building, you see. Is it desirable to consume this kind of energy? And then because the studies are submitting here that if the energy intensity of Saudi Arabia remains the same what it is today, that 10 to 15 years time, that the Saudi capacity to export oil will be declining. It is very important for us to recall that the domestic consumption of energy in all these countries are going very high, and these are very highly energy intensive societies, you see. So the people are asking questions that what kind of a economic structure we are talking of. If you have to water, you need energy, and the kind of subsidies which is going to public utilities, the huge energy is being used. So these are the issues which are being now gradually coming into the surface, which were not there on the agenda till a few years back. The second point which I want to draw attention, again this will be relevant when I bring to India-GCC, is the kind of sorry. So second, I'll just skip. Second issue is the food security, which is there. Now I'll come to Gulf because that's the main thing, and I'll just 2-3 points which I would like that will help us for discussion. You see, it's true that India's exports to the country is going up, and figures are available to us. But look at the fact that 50% of this is with the UAE, and if you add up the Saudi Arabia, that is 75% of our so-called trade with the GCC is confined to only 2 countries. And I don't have to tell you that why it is so much with the UAE, because you know the character of the UAE economy, you see. So therefore, why it's true that the volumes in terms of $1 billion is increasing, but it's worth examining that it is 2 countries out of these countries which are providing bulk of the share, and if you look at the figure here, that with most of the countries we have a trade deficit except the country called UAE, because that is a trade structure which is much more diversified. So this is again a very, as a student of economics, I wouldn't be very happy with this kind of a trade volume, you see, which is where the portfolios are, not diversified, you see. And that is the reason I'm trying to argue that this trade relationship needs to be much more robust than it is today. If you look at the capital flows also, then the region we get about the estimates are around 25 to 30 billion dollars. Remittances are coming there, which I'm talking the official transactions only. But if you look at the FDI coming from the region is again a very small 1 to 1.6% of the total FDI which is coming from the GCC countries. Now, in the short run, while there is no much serious crisis in terms of expatriate segment, in terms of hydrocarbon, and as well as trade volume concerned, I will not elaborate this point later, but the point which I want to draw attention is only this, which I think, I wish to argue here this point, that if you look at the Southeast Asia, China as an emerging manufacturing power, if you look at Asia, there are two emerging power. China is emerging in manufacturing power. India is emerging as a service power. Bulk of our exports today is coming from the export of services, you see. The China has in Southeast Asia has been able to regionalize the entire economies. So Chinese exports goes to America, but if you look at the import intensity of the Chinese exports going to the Western market, you will find the bulk of it is coming from the neighboring countries. Southeast Asia is the provider, you see. Now, I wish to argue here that the time has come, if India really believes that Gulf is its extended neighborhood, and if the stakes are very high, which are not supposed to be premised only in terms of 5 years, if we are planned to think in terms of 10 or 15, 20 years odd, then we have to think in terms of building this kind of a regionalization of the region vis-a-vis around the Indian strength, that is the knowledge-based service sector. That is the point. And here I would like to say that when doing so, it is very important for us, this can be again a point of discussion, that how the energy security and the food security can be built a kind of a linkage in the region, India and the GCC country. I am very much against what is happening at the moment, the kind of land grabbing which is being talked about. What I am trying to argue here in my presentation is that some kind of what I would like to submit here as a kind of a regional supply chain to be created there. And there can be high-end item, there can be public-private partnership, all this can be discussed and elaborated. But what I am trying to simply argue that this strategy will not work, that some $1 million are being a land is being bought in India or land is being bought in Ethiopia, because we know the kind of the concern coming from the local communities, you see. So unless and if this partnership has to be, that's what I would like to argue, that it has to be structurally interdependence, proposition. Only then you can have a lasting relationship between or enduring relationship between the two, India and the Gulf countries. The last point, I think I will stop here just now. The Gulf security, since we are talking of the, I think I would like to submit here that after the Arab uprising, the internal issues are going to play much more important role in defining the Gulf security. This is not to argue that external factors are not going to play important role, and therefore it is a time that the thrust of any security architecture which is not going to factor the so-called non-traditional source of security is not going to be sustainable proposition in the coming years. And therefore, a role has to be played by, and I have tried to argue in my presentation that how Asian collective approach can play important role in providing that kind of a structural capacities. And it is out of this is changing structural capacities, regime transformation will take place, which will not be abrupt, which will be a kind of a peaceful transition. It will not be, because unless until the structures are not changed, and the region needs this kind of a support structure, because I don't have to go into detail, because the huge gap between the kind of a wherewithal required and for this kind of systemic change and the wherewithal which is available within the region. Asian countries who have very high stake can possibly play a role. Chairman, despite my best effort, I'm sorry, extremely sorry, maybe that...
Never mind. Thank you, Professor Girijesh Pant.